Okay, we're excited to have Alex Alberti here. Alex, tell us where you currently teach.
So I teach at Longleaf School of the Arts, which is a charter arts high school in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And what courses do you teach there?
So right now, in this current year, I'm teaching three performance ensembles. So a concert band, a wind ensemble, and an orchestra class. And then I'm teaching AP psychology, music history, and the psychology and philosophy of music. And then for me, AP music theory goes every other year. So I taught
Okay,
AP theory last year, and I'll teach it this coming year.
great. So I'm just going to ask you a couple questions. So if you can just share some of your successes you've had in the AP classroom. So you can include all your other AP classes, but specifically AP music theory.
Yeah, so for me, for AP Music Theory, what I love the most is finding different avenues for students to realize that everything we're teaching is applicable to them. So, for example, I always give a contemporary a cappella arranging project where they have to use harmonic analysis on a pop song and then use part writing and voice leading to make an a cappella arrangement. And then we sing to them in class and we have a lot of fun with that. And so it relates like music they like pop music, back to function and voice leading. And I also really love using the music theory card game 451 in my class because kids get really, really, really into it and they end up learning a ton about harmonic function without realizing it in a really fun way. So those have been my favorite successes in the AP classroom, is getting kids like actually excited about the content in that way.
Oh, great. And if our students aren't familiar with 451, the card game, um, where can they get that? Is that still available to purchase online?
It is. So I think it's like musicteachertools.com, or if you just Google the Roman numerals 4-5-1 card game, it should pop up. And the creator, Rafael Hernandez, is really, really nice and will answer tons of questions if you have any, and is really accessible by email or social media. So
Good.
really, really awesome tool for the AP theory classroom.
Great. So just a question, how many of your students that take the AP test with you tend to go on and be music majors? And so let's start there. How many do you think go on to do music?
So I would probably say maybe 30% of my students go on to do it. I think basically any student that takes my AP theory class really loves music, and they probably will continue playing or participating in music most of their lives. But in terms of students who like really go for music at college, I'd say maybe 30%
Mhm.
do.
So you think the main reason that students sign up for your class is because they love music generally?
Correct. And they like having deeper conversations about music. They like understanding the way music works. And that's something that I really try to foster in class when we're having discussions about the music we're playing, or in music history, when I introduce like analysis to them in music history, they get really excited about it and they want to learn more. And so they take theory just because they love the idea of doing it, even if it's not for college.
Great. So what do you think teachers should focus on in terms of preparing for the exam?
I would say probably the number one most important skill that I think an AP teacher needs to really focus on is going to be fluency in oral skills. I would say that typically the student that takes AP theory come from a huge variety of backgrounds. And I know at my school, most of them are instrumental music students, and they, for example, for sight reading, have almost never sung.
Mhm.
And so introducing solfege, and even for some of them just matching pitch, takes all year. And really becoming fluent in singing scales and navigating the solfege system. And if I introduce like patching and talkademi, like getting some of those rhythmic concepts down, even though I'm bringing those into my ensembles now, that's some of the hardest things that the students have to deal with as they're going through the school year, is like developing those oral skills and sight singing skills. So I would say anything you might do in a traditional oral skills class in college, that's going to be the most unfamiliar and difficult to access for a lot of my AP kids, just because they come from a band background, or for rhythmic dictation, for example, a chorus background, which that's usually not always stressed very hard.
Right, right. Great. So what have been some of your challenges in teaching AP music theory?
I would say a lot of it does. Well, so two things. I would say the first one revolves around what I just said, in that a lot of students, especially in high school when they're not like, they've not like decided to do music, they can be a little bit uneasy about the skills required to do things like sing and match pitch and feel confident in their exposure to music to be able to like do melodic dictation or rhythmic dictation very well. So I would say just having kids feel competent and fluent in those dictation and singing practices is probably the hardest part. I think theory is a very logical thing. Like it's a thing you can learn, whereas I think the oral skills are more of a practice-based
Mm-hmm.
thing. And when students either haven't been practicing those skills before they got to the class, or they decide that it's not super important to practice them while they're in the class, they find themselves really stressed out. So I'd say the biggest challenge is getting those skills fluent in my students. And then I would say the other thing is, and this is going to be very different at each school that you might teach theory, is the schedule. So this year, for example, at Longleaf, or this coming year, we have switched to an ABC schedule
Mm.
where we teach 8 periods the entire year. So I'll have the kids the whole year. But really, I only meet with them. The B days are going to be, if it's a B day, for example, are an hour and 30 minutes each. And then C days are 41 minutes. So really, I only meet with my students about 3 hours and 50 minutes a week total, maybe.
Okay.
And that's not a ton of time to get the content in because it does move very fast. And so being able to pace the content with those time constraints, because there's a lot that's covered in AP theory, and getting students to be really good at it and feel really comfortable with it. I think like for the most part, like we can get the content out to them in that time period, but having them feel confident about it is hard in that crunch, especially like at some schools, they teach AP classes in one semester. Like
Right.
that's gotta be ridiculously difficult. So the schedule is probably one of the other hardest things.
And so going into that, so if you're an undergraduate student right now, or even a graduate student that's planning to go into the K through 12 school and teach AP theory, what are 3 skills that you think they need to focus on during their time at the university?
At the university to prepare.
Yeah. So how can they best prepare to be an AP music theory teacher?
So I'd say one of the first primary skills is, and it sounds very obvious, but is pedagogy. So I think a lot of people, like even if it's in performance or really any academic subject, you might be very good at it yourself. You might understand it yourself very well, and you might really love doing that thing. But when it comes to actually teaching somebody else how to do it, a lot of people don't realize that they actually feel really lost about how to even approach it. I think it's a common experience a lot of people have had that like they've met someone who tries to teach them something that they get really well, and they make all these assumptions that the student might not know, and they skip 40 steps, and they just can't wrap their head around how to teach a concept.
Right.
So when a student is in their undergraduate or graduate education, I think they need to develop some practical pedagogy skills and actual experience learning how to teach a theory concept, not just understand it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think practical pedagogy experience is one of those things and different methods. I think another skill that must be developed in the undergraduate realm is being able to relate theory concepts to different types of music. So when you go and you're let's say you're a TA for like a theory 4 class in an undergraduate setting, like typically those are students that have had many, many years of Western classical training and feel super confident. And so teaching in that setting might be easy. But when you go to high school students who are exposed to very vastly different interests and different types of music, I think being able to learn how to relate the content back to like either pop music or, certain types of classical music, I think music that a young kid might really know and be exposed to, I think that's important. And so undergraduates need to like dig into those archives of different songs that they like and figure out how to relate the theory concepts there, and then take them back into the K through 12 classroom to make it more accessible to those students.
Yeah. Great.
Yes.
What about the third one? What do you think?
Okay, so for a third one, I would say by the time they're about to graduate, I think they need to quickly go back and make sure they brush up on some of the skills that maybe they learned in like theory 2 that may have eluded them by the time they've graduated. So for example, if I have to go back and teach augmented six chords, I'm like, okay, wait, which one is which again? And they resolve out like in like having to really make sure you remember those like little concepts that you maybe had a unit of in your early undergraduate theory classes. Make sure you brush up on those before you go back into the classroom to teach it yourself. For example, one of my biggest horror stories is I taught an entire class of kids how to do octave register numbers the wrong way because I forgot that the numbering restarts at C and not A. So I taught them A 1 2 3 4 5 6 or A B C D E F G 1 and then A2 instead of resetting at C. And so I taught an entire year of that wrong because I forgot. And I just needed to go back and look at that very simple concept from early theory and brush up on it.
So adding on to that, how important do you think is, let me just say like piano skills or singing skills in the AP classroom as the teacher?
I think very important. Although they're not, I would say singing maybe more so than piano. So for example, I have both had theory classes and taught theory classes in which the piano skills eluded me when I was trying to do harmonic dictation for my kids. Or if a theory teacher that I had like kept messing up harmonic dictations and we all laugh about it, but like just making sure that like you have those piano skills to like read melodic things fluently, to play melodic dictations for them or to play a harmonic dictation. However, if you are not proficient in those things, there's tons of YouTube videos that give harmonic dictations. There's an incredible set of harmonic dictation videos on YouTube from someone named James Woodward, who I've used every year of taught theory, and there's like tons of them, and they get progressively harder very slowly. So you have a lot of content to work with, and he plays the harmonic dictations for you and gives you the staff and the starting pitches. So everything is right there for you. So if you're not piano proficient, totally you can use those. But in terms of singing, I would say it's fairly important to be able to model matching pitch and being able to fluently go between chord tones and like chromatic pitches, because it helps students to be able to hear someone do those things out loud. So modeling in that way, I think, is really important. So singing skills, I would say, are pretty key.
Great. Any other words of wisdom you'd like to impart on students?
I would say just make sure you approach theory with a passion and excitement, because if students think it's a really boring practice, they're not going to get excited about it. But if you nerd out about theory and show how excited you are and talk about some of your favorite stories from undergrad or share some of your favorite parts about theory and truly get excited and passionate about it, the students are going to mirror those same feelings. That's really important, I think.
All right. Thank you, Alex.